Alright.
Whew. Let's take a look around. If we're good, we're good.
We are good.
That's amazing. Alright, let's get this started. Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to 2K Weekly in the first true episode. After an actual week has happened, we've had a full stream. We've had some time. And I'll say what a first week zero it was. Your thoughts about it, Danny, before we get started?
This week had a lot of big upsets, especially this one huge one, which we'll get to soon, but
If you
we
followed the
got a lot
channel,
of big things.
you probably know the big upset that we just got started with. We have some top stories, and this is the big one, the Sundale. Number 24 Arizona State beating Utah, number 4 team in the country, 49-39. That was the game on the stream yesterday. We had a bit of crunch yesterday and today getting both these streams up, but thankfully we got them all up on time. Also yesterday was the MEAC SWAC kickoff, and a big game for Southern as they took down Norfolk State 47-17. We'll talk about that. Another upset in St. Louis, the neutral-sided arch rivalry saw Missouri, the number 25 team in the country, lose to the Illinois Fighting Illini. Another sort of... Neither team was ranked, but there was a big upset in Maryland College Park. UCF taken down by the upstart Terps, 32-27. And a big name showed himself up this week. Greg Kidd, the new kid on the block, helped Rutgers completely demolish the Princeton D. Big win for them, 50-20. In Arlington, they have back-to-back college games, and Texas A&M came in and made it look easy against rival Arkansas. And we'll wrap up top stories with a rivalry, the old Iron Skillet. Last year, the game had to be postponed due to rain, but TCU was able to take back SMU without delay, take back the Iron Skillet, 38-27. And we'll get to all of that and more in a moment. But we also have some other games to talk about. We'll start in Philadelphia, Temple University Stadium, the first game of the year. Oklahoma taking on Temple. Both teams coming off 5-7 seasons. And it was the Sooners who pulled away 27-14 the win. Good game for Britt Marvin of OU, 13-34, 197 yards, but 3 interceptions. And Mario Whitehead had 2 receptions, 34 yards, and a touchdown. Your thoughts?
Both these teams really needed a big win, especially how they performed last season. So to have Oklahoma win, they're off to the correct start.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that this will be the last we see of this Temple team, though. As we head up to West Point, the Army Black Knights absolutely crushing Yale, 23-3. How about I believe it's just Tria Dixon. Tria. There's no L, I don't think. Not great passing, but Army has always been a rush team, and they ran the ball all over the place. But this defense was surprisingly good as well. 2 interceptions for the Black Knights, as Yale's offense shut out for the first time since week 3 of last year against UConn. Danny?
Yep, that Army, they really just punched it down Yale's throat.
Mm-hmm. We head from Mitchie Stadium to the Dome at America's Center in St. Louis, where Missouri came in as the favorite, but got stunned as the nation was by the Illinois Fighting Illini. They get the win 20-10. This is their first time beating a ranked opponent in week 1 when they weren't ranked themselves since 2009 when they beat Iowa State, number 16. We also had some good stats from Missouri's running back, in spite of their loss, Nate Salazar, a 42-yard touchdown and 2 interceptions for this Missouri defense. Danny?
Yeah, that Illinois, they were the surprise hit of this weekend, and I think the rest of the teams in the Big Ten need to watch out because they have to be afraid of Mr. Fighting Illini.
Definitely that game later this season against Indiana might be a proving ground for that division. We head up to Husky Stadium. The big story of last year, out of nowhere, Northern Illinois storming through a big through a big win streak, 31-14 the final score. They keep it going after a 14-0 season last year. They are now on win number, I want to say 21. If I'm trying to remember last week's stream, you can fact check me later. But number 8 NIU got the win, taking down the Holy Cross Crusaders. Cameron Hansen, 156 yards rushing, and 2 rushing TDs. Surprised that the passing game wasn't there, but Illinois has always been a rush first team and good defense as well. Danny, your thoughts?
Yeah, that basically it wasn't hard for them to basically beat down, them, but it was a good surprise
Yeah.
to see them just absolutely demolish.
As we head down to Texas, Nicholls State taking on Texas State. This was a game I don't remember us getting a score for, or we'll fill in the stat. We'll have to get the stats for this checked out. But big game for big game for Texas State, trying to right their momentum after a rocky year last year. Danny.
Yep. And these two teams, they had a lot to look forward to, and well, glad Texas State could win the rivalry game at least.
Yeah, big rivalry. And now we're heading down to Atlanta for the MEAC SWAC Challenge. Always great to see HBCU schools in action. Definitely a whole different ball game in that area. But this game was not even close, baby. Southern demolishing Norfolk State. 47-17 the final. Some big stars coming out. Some names that probably, well, obviously the audience have never heard of. But some people in universe might not have heard of either. Quarterback Le'Shawn O'Neal, 12 of 23, 120 yards and 2 touchdowns with an interception. But how about Armel White, 139 yards on the day and 2 touchdowns, including a 65-yarder. Your thoughts, Danny?
Yeah, basically Southern exposed Norfolk, and it's going to be really interesting for Southern, especially how later on this season they're actually traveling to Southern Mississippi.
That could be a dangerous game for the Golden Eagles, as the Jaguars might be able to sneak an upset. Though I don't think this is the last we'll see of this Norfolk State team. Khalil Dennis had a rough game, but they're still the favorites, in my opinion, of the MEAC conference. Let's head from Atlanta to Montgomery for the FCS kickoff. A battle of the Bears. Northern Colorado taking on Maine. 26-21 the final score. The Northern Colorado Bears pull out the win. And big game for running back Shelton Woodard. 25 attempts for 138 yards. But the big star actually came on the losing team. I would say Myron Brown had a very good day. 264 yards passing and a touchdown. Your thoughts, Danny?
Yeah, that Maine, they do have a lot to improve, but at least it was very close and competitive. In Northern Colorado, they could be a sneaky contender for
an
the national title picture.
We'll keep an eye on the FCS. We'll take some peeks in there throughout the year. Let's head to a team who just joined the FBS, Jacksonville State, making their name known as they'll take on the Troy Trojans. It was a close game, but eventually Troy pulled away 37-27 the final score. Michael Freund, I had to practice that name. A great game, 335 yards, 4 touchdowns. He does have an interception, but great game all around for Troy. Your thoughts?
Jacksonville State really surprised, especially how they're a brand new FBS team. I'm glad they could refill this old rivalry between them and Troy for the old school bell. They performed a lot better than the other new FBS team, to say the least.
We'll get to them in a moment. We have, I believe, 7 new FCS turned FBS teams this year, 2 of which were in action this week. But let's head up to College Park. A battle between 2 unranked teams. Maryland, fresh off a Sun Bowl win last year. UCF got a win in the Liberty Bowl. I believe, no, it was Ticket City Bowl, pardon me. But 32-27, Maryland getting out there with an upset that doesn't look like an upset on paper. But the big days nonetheless for new quarterback at UCF, Jack Gomez, 16 for 31, 234 yards, and 2 touchdowns with an interception. while Maryland's quarterback Terry Doherty, 16 to 21, 256 yards, a touchdown, and interception. Kicker Howard Bryan came in with a go-ahead field goal with 3:16. They managed to get another one before the end of the game, which gave us the final score 32-27. Danny.
It was very disappointing to see UCF lose, especially how I was cheering for them. But
Mm-hmm.
it is what it is.
It happens, you know. Let's head out to Gainesville. Some other Florida teams in action. South Florida heading down to the Swamp to take on the number 25 Gators. A big win for Florida, but closer than I think the score shows. Some good stats for USF, including an 11 of 20 and 107-yard, 2-touchdown day for Ruben Graves, quarterback for USF, and 2 interceptions for one cornerback, number 96, Kurt Griffin. Your thoughts, Danny?
Yeah, Florida basically demolished the Bulls, and
Mm-hmm.
we have a lot to see about Florida to see if they're back into momentum or they're going to melt down again.
If you followed the streams on the TaipeiJoey 101 channel, you'll remember Florida, the 11-win team, lost back-to-back games to end the year. The SEC championship, they lost to LSU, and they lost the Bulls to Illinois, who we saw earlier in action. So maybe this Illinois team is a lot more than we thought. Let's head to Arlington for the Southwest Classic. Arkansas taking on Texas A&M in Jerry World. 31-13 the final score. Texas A&M, big win for them. Casey Peters was 18 of 37, 204 yards, touchdown, and 3 interceptions, though. Definitely a lot of room to improve. Your thoughts?
You have to feel like that Arkansas head coach might be on the hot seat as of now because they lost their bowl game. They barely made bowl eligibility, and now they got blown out in the first game. So you have to see that his seat might be getting a bit warm.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. We might have I plan to have a feature sometime soon on coaches who are in the hot seat. Let's head north, or let's head west rather, to Dallas proper for the Iron Skillet battle. TCU and SMU. Last year's game got delayed, if you remember, due to weather. It was originally slated for 3, but got moved back to 5:30. I believe TCU won that game last year, if you can correct me. No, it was SMU who won last year, I think. But nonetheless,
Yeah, I think SMU won.
SMU got the one last year, but TCU managed to take it back this year, 38-27 in Dallas. This TCU team trying to prove that they're not just an odd one out in the Mountain West. They're a true contender. Running back Joe Douglas had a great day for the team. 3 touchdowns, including a 68-yarder on the ground. Avery McKay had a good game. But there's a big thorn in the side of TCU, and that's their 7 penalties they gave up.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Yep, this right here was definitely a good game, and don't be surprised if either one of these teams become ranked at some point.
Mm-hmm. SMU has a tough race out in the Conference USA West, but TCU also has got a very tough slate ahead of them. We'll see if these teams can fight with the big ones, and we'll head out west. We don't have the feature for the game we saw last week, but check out the last stream if you want more in depth on that. But we have one more game here. San Diego State heading up north to Fresno to take on the Bulldogs. Charlie Bride, a dark horse candidate for a potential Heisman, and 21 of 26 and 302 yards with a touchdown. One of the better reviewed quarterbacks in the FBS. San Diego State has a pretty good running back as well in Eduardo Ortega, though Ortega had a pretty muted game today, 53 yards and a touchdown. Felix Decker, quarterback for SDSU, was 18 of 26 and 199 yards on the day, but the SDSU stifled by the Fresno defense, scoreless until the third quarter, and it didn't help that Fresno was firing on all cylinders. Danny?
Yeah, that San Diego State, they need to improve, especially with how tough their competition is, against Boise State and a lot of other teams that
Boise
are going to be
State,
playing against the
BYU,
seasons.
Utah. I
Yep.
believe they have TCU as well. But the old oil can is heading back, is staying in Fresno. Here's the full slate of games from August 27th, yesterday, week 0. We have some scores that jump out to me is Wake Forest getting a 1-point win over Liberty, Sam Houston slipping past Youngstown State in a sneaky upset, Memphis beating Arkansas State 27-24, and of course that score near the bottom 49-39, the Sun Devils upsetting the Utes. Danny?
There's one game here that not many people overlooked, and that's the Illinois State North Alabama game. That could have been easily an FCS FBS upset.
Illinois State was able to pull away. And we have a feature here. The Heisman Trophy will be awarded on the stream December 11th. We'll also be showing off the bowl games as well as other awards. But the Heisman Trophy is the one that looms large. As lots of players want to nab this and put their name in history. And here we're going to show you a couple names that you might want to watch out for in the near future as potential top 20 or as potential Heisman candidates, top 25s later, pardon me. I want to focus on this guy on the left, John Rogers, the junior out of Louisville. Well, he's a scrambler quarterback. He's been performing very well in camp. But the big thing you might know him for was his performance in the Sugar Bowl last year, completely destroying LSU. Up next, we have Kevin Jones, the senior out of Clemson. He might be a case much like in the real world with Johnny Manziel, where the team doesn't have that great a record, but he performs well enough that he's given the nod. Last year's Heisman winner was Northern Illinois running back Warren Hodson. Hodson moved on to the NFL, but now the big name on the team is redshirt senior Cameron Hansen. He was part of that 14-0 team as well. A key contributor that got a little overshadowed in the run-heavy offense, but don't forget the name of Cameron Hansen. Some other names going down the list: Terrence Noel, the junior out of Oregon; Mason Booth, running back senior out of Oklahoma State; a running back we saw earlier today, Nate Salazar, the junior out of Missouri; and a guy that I don't know if a lot of people are going to bring up, but the junior wide receiver out of USC, Brandon Williams, might be a potential candidate. Danny, anyone you're thinking of?
Not that much as of now. I mean, their season hasn't really started yet, and many of these teams have not even played. So I would suggest we just hold back and see how they actually do.
Mm-hmm. I think that my favorite right now will be John Rogers by the end of the season. And we'll see him in action next week in a big game. And now it's time to reveal your top 25 for next week. We have we have a bit of movement, especially with the big upset last night. But we're going to start with our top 5 here, most of which remains the same, but there is a little bit of movement. Without Utah, Stanford remains number 1, Baylor number 2, and Michigan number 3. That carries over. Number 4 now is Indiana, bumped up a spot thanks to the Arizona State's upset of Utah. And wrapping up the top 5 is Northern Illinois. This is the highest ranking they've ever had in school history. Danny?
That the first 3 were kind of obvious. I mean, everyone predicted that they were going to be the top 3, so not that much of a surprise. But definitely Indiana and North Illinois, they both have a lot
Oh, you're cut off.
to show up, especially against the other competitors. That the first 3 were very obvious, but Indiana and Northern Illinois, they are big surprises, and we got to see how they perform to see if they could potentially make the national championship picture.
Yeah, we'll see how they do. Let's move on to 6 through 10. Number 6, we have Minnesota. Number 7 is Kansas State. Both teams were around that area last time. Number 8 is Louisville. Got a bump up thanks to Arizona State. Number 9 is Rutgers, who beat Princeton. That was another score we mentioned earlier. And number 10, Oregon, getting the boost. Anyone jump out How do you hear, Danny?
I think the big one would be Louisville and Oregon because Louisville has an extremely big game for week one, which we'll get to later.
Mm-hmm.
And also, they got a lot later on the road, especially in conference play. And for Oregon, they just kind of sneaked in thanks to Utah's falling.
Yeah, we forget Oregon played in the Rose Bowl last year, losing to Indiana. Let's move on to the next five up. Number 11 is Boise State. Number 12 is Utah, who had that loss to Arizona State. Number 13, North Carolina. Number 14, Virginia Tech. And number 15, BYU. A Mountain West dominated middle slot here. Three teams who were the big three last year in the Mountain West. Danny?
The Mountain West may have dominated the middle section this week, but coming up this week, I don't think it's going to be that obvious, especially with BYU having a very, very big game for week one, which if they win, they'll tremendously jump up, and if they lose, they'll go down, which we'll all explain later.
Yeah.
But all these middle teams, they have some sort of trap game this week.
We also don't want to miss number 13 North Carolina and 14 Virginia Tech. Both open next week against seemingly inferior opponents, but you always want to watch out for traps. I'm very
Especially
excited.
out there on the road.
Definitely. North Carolina is headed on the road to take on Charlotte. Let's move on to the next five. Number 16 is LSU, the reigning SEC champions, trying to right the conference's ship. Number 17, Arizona State. Big jump after defeating the Utes. Number 18 is New Mexico State. They played in the Fiesta Bowl last year against Utah. Number 19, we have the Syracuse Orange. And number 20, the Clemson Tigers. Danny?
The biggest surprise here is New Mexico State because they are still a group of a non-power 5 team, so it'll still be good to see how they perform.
Mm-hmm. They finished last season 12-2 after the conference championship win over Hawaii, but they lost the Fiesta Bowl to Utah. Let's move on to our final five. Starting off at number 21 is West Virginia. Number 22 is Florida. Number 23, Tennessee. Number 24 is Dave Show. And number 25 is Oklahoma State. That's an interesting case. Thanks to Missouri dropping out and Illinois beating them, Oklahoma State ended up the highest ranked among the three polls that Danny and I, as well as our good friend DePig Bear, did for this season. Anyone jump out at you here?
Definitely Oklahoma State because they just came out and just popped onto the scene, and we got to see how they perform.
Oklahoma State, I consider a potential dark horse for a Big 12 championship. Let's take a look at the next five up. We have Illinois, who got that big win. Missouri, who dropped out. Army and TCU both got wins we saw earlier, as well as the one team who hasn't played that's on our next five up is Appalachian State. They finished the SoCon last year with a 11-win record, I want to say.
Yep.
We'll definitely have to see if App State can take the next big step. I believe next is our Players of the Week. We didn't see a lot of action, but we saw some good action here. My Player of the Week, personally, is Greg Kidd, the wide receiver out of Rutgers. 3 receptions for 94 yards, a 64-yard punt return touchdown, and 2 receiving touchdowns against the Princeton Tigers. I also want to shout out Armel White out of Southern, Joe Douglas from TCU, and Terrence Velasquez, who was big in that game last night against Utah. Anyone else you want to think of, Danny?
Not much. You got all the points correct that I think of.
All right. We have big games coming up next week. Here are the games that you might want to watch. We have a ranked matchup. Number 19 Syracuse will be taking on number 23 Tennessee in Atlanta for the Chick-fil-A kickoff. Navy will take on Notre Dame. Notre Dame potentially could be sneaking into that top 25 next week. A neutral site game in the brand new stadium in Virginia Beach. We'll see the VMI Keydets take on the number 14 Virginia Tech Hokies. The Big House opens as New Mexico will head in to take on the number 3 Wolverines. The Baylor Bears open up at home against the Auburn Tigers. We have a matchup between two of the biggest names in college football, Texas and Ohio State. Number 13 North Carolina heads on the road to play UNC Charlotte. They have to avoid a trap here. The Louisiana kickoff in New Orleans will see another top 25 potential team, Florida State, taking on the number 10 Oregon Ducks. We have a big game we'll go in depth on. We have number 4 Indiana taking on number 8 Louisville in Indianapolis. The Cowboys kickoff classic sees UCLA taking on Georgia. Our good friends Dave Show at number 24, starting the season ranked for the first time in school history, as they'll head on the road to Allegiant Stadium to take on the UNLV Rebels. Miami, we're heading down to Marlins Park for the Hurricanes and the FIU Panthers. You don't want to miss that one. And I don't remember the name of the rivalry, but Marshall will be taking on number 21 West Virginia. Is it the Coal Bowl? I believe it's the Coal Bowl.
And let me just do a quick little search.
I do remember the name. I'm pretty sure I remember the name of the next one, the Rocky Mountain Showdown between Colorado and Colorado State at Mile High Stadium in Denver. A big game for Colorado to prove their worth. Number 7, Kansas State, heading on the road to Purdue. Watch out, Purdue at home against top teams, always dangerous. And then we get a real big game. Number 15, BYU, heading up to Stanford Stadium to take on the reigning national champions Cardinal as they unveil their championship banner. We'll have a game. There's a game late at night. Especially if you're here on the East Coast, all the way in Sydney, Australia, the Air Force Falcons taking on the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. We'll have some scores come in after. We'll have an extra slot in week 2's or in week 1's 2KU Weekly, or in week 2's 2KU Weekly for some games after our broadcast. Georgia Tech taking on number 20 Clemson on Sunday, and a neutral site in Allegiant Stadium. That's Kansas takes on Arizona in Vegas on Monday. Danny, you have any big games?
All these are the big games that I would recommend. I mean, BYU at Stanford is probably one of the biggest trap games for Stanford because BYU has a lot of big games and they want to start off big. Mm-hmm. And also the Marshall, West Virginia game is called Friends of Coal Bowl.
Friends of Coal Bowl. Perfect. Now don't forget to tune in next Saturday, September 3rd at 7. We'll have a top 10 showdown at Lucas Oil Stadium. The number 4 Indiana Hoosiers, reigning Big Ten champs, will be taking on the number 8 Louisville Cardinals, the reigning Conference USA champs. It's a battle of the Cardinal versus the Crimson. Don't forget to tune in. That'll do it for us here today. I want to thank you all for watching. We have a lot to go over. We had a lot to go over today, and we'll have a lot to go over next week. So we hope to see you there.